Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we've got a massive storm growing in the Caribbean with very intense rainfall as Tropical Depression number 13 looks to become a hurricane into this weekend. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning, and we can see these cold cloud tops, and that's an indication the storm is strengthening, especially with this lightning display right around the center. It is pretty close to land right now, right on the coast of Venezuela, and Aruba has been getting some very heavy rainfall, but this is expected to continue westbound into this weekend and get out into these open waters where it's expected to rapidly intensify into a hurricane. So they're already seeing some outer bands into portions of Jamaica as well as into the Cayman Islands. So let's take a look at the overall National Hurricane Center latest forecast as this morning, and this is a formidable tropical depression currently right now, but once it gets out into the open waters and continues westbound, it is expected to become Tropical Storm Julia sometime today, and this is continuing westbound. You can already see we already have hurricane watches for this island where it's expected to intensify into a hurricane, if not an 85-mile-per-hour hurricane, just within a 48-hour time span. You can see the cone takes it just south of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands and continues westbound into Nicaragua. They look to take a direct hit from this system as a formidable hurricane, but it's going to have a lot of heavy rain and intense winds with it, and it's going to bring major flooding to portions of Nicaragua, Honduras, but this continues west, impacting those areas into El Salvador. Even Guatemala will be seeing a tropical depression with some very heavy rain, even into Belize with this system in the coming days. So let's take a look at the overall wind swath from this system, as most of the activity looks to remain south. At least the tropical storm force winds will remain just south of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, but I still feel you'll get the outer bands and some heavier rains on at least the southern portions of this system. But the main impacts are going to be those very intense winds and the extremely heavy rain as this continues to be rapidly intensify as it comes ashore. But those tropical storm force winds are going to be felt well inland, all the way into Honduras, into El Salvador, but even into portions of Guatemala and Belize are still going to be impacting from the storms, not just with the heavier rains, but you still could be seeing some up to tropical storm force wind gusts going into this weekend and Monday of next week. But all indications from all model guidance has this continuing westbound, but it continues to remain an active storm, and even some indications where a piece of this actually reemerges out into the Gulf of Mexico and the southern Gulf into the Bay of Campeche sometime around Wednesday and Thursday of next week, actually adding to help bring some moisture back into Texas with some much needed rainfall. So let's take a look at the overall setup this morning on the overall precipitable water index, and you can definitely see it's really starting to get its act together once it gets out into these open waters. Whenever you see these numbers of 2 to possibly 3-inch rainfall rates and all these purples trying to come together, yeah, that's an indication where the storm is going to be intensifying, leaving those outer bands well ahead of it. So you should be getting some heavier rains today into portions of Jamaica as well as into the Cayman Islands, and start feeling the effects into Central America, especially into portions of Nicaragua. But it doesn't really have that much shear to work with. So once it gets out into these open waters, that's the concern, that it's going to be rapidly intensified. And yet we're going to have another storm that's unfortunately going to be rapidly intensifying, especially right as it comes ashore, because these shears are essentially less than 5 and 10 knots. So that's little to no shear as this continues to reemerge out into the open waters, and it's going to go over some pretty high heat potential with a lot of deep ocean heat to contend with. So you always got sea surface anomalies well above average at the surface, but underneath it as well. So, and you typically see that in October. So that's why you got to have concern, especially in the Caribbean with these storms, because it's very conducive this time of year for these things to rapidly intensify as they especially get out of these open waters, and especially out with these low shear environment. But here's the concern, because the overall hurricane model, once it gets out of these open waters, there's Jamaica, so you can see it remains south of there, but it's definitely going to be a formidable storm, and it should become a hurricane sometime tomorrow. So remember, it's just a tropical depression right now, but all indications are expected this to be rapidly intensified once it gets out of these open waters with all the fuel that it has to work with. And that's the concern, as this really starts to rapidly deepen and then to a formidable hurricane. So here's the latest GFS guidance, taking it down to about a 995 millibar as a hurricane as we get into tomorrow afternoon, with a formidable storm making a beeline, sending these outflow winds, expanding in nature, sending those outflow rain bands into portions of Jamaica, into the Cayman Islands, and then eventually, as we get into your later on Saturday, into the overnight on Saturday, the outer bands will start emerging into the coastline portions of Nicaragua as this continues to rapidly deepen and become a massive storm by then. And then all indications, again, takes this down to potentially a 980 millibar low pressure. That would definitely be a formidable hurricane. This is almost matching the guidance of the National Hurricane Center, coming ashore around an 85 mile per hour hurricane somewhere around Sunday morning time frame. So if you're living in Nicaragua, you're going to be at high alert from this system making a direct impact, direct landfall in your area with very intense rains and then very high winds. And there's even some indications this could actually intensify even further than what some of the latest guidance displays. So here's the latest hurricane model. So remember, with Ian, it actually overperformed and was able to rapidly intensify under the same type of environment, about a 35 mile per hour increase in just a 4-hour time span. To get rapid intensification, you typically need 35 mile per hour within a 24-hour time span. So that was the concern with that storm. And then it overperformed, went over the initial guidance of any storm, any guidance there was, and made landfall at its peak intensity. And unfortunately, this scenario can't be ruled out. So yes, that is the concern. As it comes ashore, it could be really rapidly deepening into a formidable storm and creating a pretty massive eye with this storm as it comes ashore. And a major hurricane can't be 100% rolled out at this point in the next 48 hours. So here, if that scenario were to happen, that would be a serious storm nonetheless, of very intense range. You can see the formidable eye, really symmetrical eye with this system, bringing intense rainfall. There's the blue on the map. You don't really see that often. That's just an indication of over 3 inches. It's just basically maxing out the available potential energy in the atmosphere with the water content, just max 100% essentially. What's maximization of what you can accumulate from this storm, with everything of all the dynamics coming together. So that would be a serious scenario, especially as it comes ashore, unfortunately, sometime on Sunday mornings. But here's your overall wind swath, basically displaying that the highest wind gust will be essentially right as it comes ashore, the proximity of land. Yes, we have yet another system that's going to be maximizing right before landfall. And here's the other concern, is just the extremely heavy rain with this system. I think even the outer bands into Jamaica still going to be picking up several inches of rain from this system, even into the Cayman Islands. But obviously further south, where it makes landfall, and it does appear that it's going to be somewhere just north of the Bluefields area in Nicaragua, with potentially upwards to 15 plus inches of rainfall. And some of these white shaded areas, that includes those 15-inch rain amounts, will extend well inland into portions of Honduras, getting into portions of El Salvador. And then even higher rain amounts will still, as it still remains intact as a storm, downgrading to a tropical depression by then, but it'll still have a lot of heavier rain. So even 4 to 8 inch rain amounts can't even be reeled out, even into the Guatemala area, and especially into the Belize as it continues to move inland. Sunday going into Monday, Tuesday, you're still going to have impacts, and then it's going to reemerge back out into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And by the time we get into Wednesday and your Thursday time frame, some of the remnants of this storm is actually going to be reemerging into the southern portions of the Bay of Campeche, and that will be influenced by this upper level trough that's going to be coming in and help open up the Gulf of Mexico and bring actually some much needed rain showers into portions of Texas by then, as this will continue to push further north into Texas with some of those much needed rain showers. But overall, what's behind Julia is really not much, which is good. So this is the latest update from the EPS guidance. Has this coming ashore sometime Sunday morning into Nicaragua, really impacting those areas, somewhat re-emerging out into the Bay of Campeche. But behind it, we'll have to watch some tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa. But overall, nothing to be terribly concerned over the next 10 days after Julia makes impact. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, catch the latest update where I protect you before and after storms.